and there's no gentle way, is that I'll get the students that are like, I want to be in the film industry to make a lot of money. Yeah. And I'm like, goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, please, I hope you have a backup plan.
Yeah.
Welcome to Set Life, where we tell stories from our industry. I'm Kelly Leger, and this is Amber Buteau.
Welcome to Set Life. We're here at For the One Studio on Soundstage 1, and we have a guest with us today that's a local who we adore and love, that is a great supporter of education, the community, and the industry in film and television here in Houston. Welcome to the show, Jenny Waldo.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Excited.
Yeah, so Jenny and I met through the internship program through...
Yeah, but I think we met at Austin Film Festival before that.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, just random. Yeah, because I don't think that was the year my film was there. I think it was the year after. And Alfred, we were like walking in at the same time.
Yes.
And Alfred was there. And so Alfred Cervantes, our film commissioner.
Film commissioner, who's great.
Yeah.
Great connector.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that guy just is about connecting everybody.
Yeah, so
love
great.
him. But you have been a key instrument here at the studio for our intern program. You have recommended and helped us foster the intern program that we have here at the studio.
Wow.
She's been one of the...
We got some great interns, so
Yes.
thank you. It's been really cool.
Thank you for having them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great training ground and good people. So yeah, I'm always looking for ways to connect my students to the local community and finding work and experience, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt.
Yeah, and you do such a great job at that. So tell us about Jenny Waldo. Tell us what you do. I know you're in education as a teacher, but you've produced and you have features and shorts, and you kind of have your hands in a bunch of different things film-wise. And so enlighten us.
Well, I'm originally from Washington, D.C., and I really didn't know what I wanted to be growing up. And I was a dancer semi-professionally when I was younger, and, I learned to do black and white photography from my father when I was a child. It was my first grade science project to develop photographs and stuff.
Wow.
So I had all these kind of hands in various things, but I just didn't know how to put it all together into a job or a career. And I had a light bulb moment when I was in college that was like, film is interesting. I love film. I love movies. I, watched a lot of, growing up. I had kind of an interesting film background where my dad was from Florida and loved all the like blockbuster movies and Star Wars and Star Trek. And my mother was from the former Czechoslovakia, communist country, and grew up with like new wave European films and stuff with like pantomiming and clowns and all this stuff. And it was like these really artsy films.
Wow. And
so it was a really interesting kind of cross section of the film world. And I was just kind of like, oh, well, there was just something kind of speaking to me about film. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. And I did an internship on the Paramount lot as a senior in college, which was really cool. Fell in love with Los Angeles, but was trying to kind of figure out how to get started. Came back to DC and started working in the documentary industry there. And so I worked for, a few different production companies there, learned a lot. And I've done a lot of work in documentary, but my passion is more for scripted filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of like, how do I get out of this? Like, I want to go back to LA. I want to be more a part of the bigger films being made and written. And so I applied to film school and went to USC for their graduate program, their MFA in film production, got myself back there. Still ended up doing documentaries because they've got a great doc program there.
Wow.
And, especially already having some work experience in it, a lot of the other students were like, oh my God, we need a producer. And I was actually really really grateful that I listened to that or, ended up going with that, because I learned a lot about producing in a way that I don't think I would have if I had kind of followed my own desire to be like, oh, well, I want to learn how to be an editor or something, because an editor always needs to be hired by somebody else. A producer generates your own work.
That's right.
You know? And so I learned a lot about producing and used that to kind of work on my own scripted stuff on the side. Did a thesis film, shot on 35 millimeter, which was so cool back in the day.
Yes,
and then life brought me kind of circuitously to Houston. And so I've been kind of just jumping into the industry here in the community, working with organizations like SWAMP, the Southwest Alternate Media Project, and eventually started teaching. But, you know, I produced other people's stuff, still did some educational documentary work, but kind of slowly started transitioning more into scripted. And then a few years ago, really wanted to get back into writing and directing. And so that's been kind of my latest kind of transition, is focusing on my own work. And so I had a short film that did well in the festival circuit called Acid Test, and I adapted that into my first feature film, which premiered at Austin Film Festival in 2021, and then and is now out for distribution. I'm working on my second feature. I got a grant for a short film, so I'm in production on that. So I do a lot of, like everybody, you kind of do a lot of different things, but so.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That's full circle and back here to Houston. Well, Houston's super grateful to have you with all that experience. And by the way, Paramount, I'll be honest with you, is still my favorite lot.
I love it.
It's my favorite.
It's beautiful.
The history, their backlot's the best.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's the best out of all.
I love it.
Just saying.
Yeah. My second favorite would be Warner Brothers. I spent a lot of time on that one too.
A lot of history there too. Very cool. Wow. Neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was fun.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I love that your students get that wealth of knowledge.
Totally.
You know, I mean, the experience of doing the industry, not just, there's what I say about college and education is like everybody can teach out of a book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But when it's, the rubber meets the road and you got to get up there and apply that, that's a whole nother.
That's true.
A whole nother ball game.
100%.
We were talking on another episode of Set Life with somebody, and we were talking about how they could do, I forget what we were saying, they could do something without the pressure at the time. Oh, it was the makeup artist. Like when they have a whole lot of time to do the makeup and do what they want and how they like and all that. But on set, can you do that in 20 minutes?
Right.
Can you turn that around in like this? Can you fix the problem like that?
Right.
Like that real life experience, to have a teacher that has that can pour into students.
Totally.
That is the best education, when you can couple those two things together to really prepare you for, to be in the industry, how to get into the industry, what it really looks like. And is, and I know that's great that you do that very well with your students.
I do love it. I really, really do love teaching. It really is a passion of mine. I mean, of course I love film, so it's like I can talk about it all day, every day. And that's so, but talking about how to do it and how to find a career, because there isn't a corporate ladder to follow. There isn't a handbook,
straight line.
Yeah, so it's just, and everybody that I know has these kind of zigzagging stories of how they ended up here, and it's so I feel like I've seen a little bit of a lot of things, and done a bunch of things myself and have that experience. That was another thing when I went into teaching, was I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just regurgitating what I had learned as a student.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to have my own kind of process or my own experience of putting that into practice to fall back on or to be able to teach. And so that was something that I, had 10 years by the time I started teaching.
So I've got a question for you. How do you teach, or what has your experience been? This is one of those industries. One, creatives are highly emotional. I don't know how to say this. And they're very passionate about what they're creating. So there is a large amount of failure in this industry. What and how do you teach through or give advice to the young filmmaker who pours their life into this film and it doesn't do what, it's going to be viral. We were talking about this live.
It's going to be viral.
It's going to be viral. It's going to be amazing. It's going to do like here, and it flatlines.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm never doing this again. Right.
Yeah.
Like, how do you, I would think with your students and stuff like that, what has your experience been in that? Because it's an industry that does this.
Right. Right.
And you've got to be able to withstand all that.
Yeah. Well, that's a conversation we have all the time. And I hear it a lot, especially going to networking events or, when I was working with the nonprofits. I remember there was a guy at an event who said something like, well, if this thing doesn't hit, then I'm quitting. And I looked at, I think it was Wyatt Cagle, who was with me, local filmmaker and CEO, of a production company here, and I was kind of like, I think he should quit now.
You should quit now.
Yeah,
I think and because it is a roller coaster, and you do have to. I think there's a way to do it without hardening yourself to it. I mean, certainly some people do.
Yeah.
Just get bitter and grumpy, and Yeah. But I try to still be open and excited, and every project is a new opportunity. But it is that roller coaster ride is something that I'm very passionate about speaking with my students about and trying to figure out. It's something that I've incorporated into one of the final semester classes that I developed, this portfolio class, where we talk a lot about personal bottom lines. And I was like, everybody has their bottom line. Or like everybody has, certain needs, like, family needs or financial situations or, a job or whatever, whatever it is that you have certain bottom lines. And this was something that I learned also as a student. I was working when I was at USC. I was a researcher for my professors were writing a book on creative filmmaking. And one of the people, they interviewed all these amazing filmmakers from various different backgrounds. And one of them was an actress. And she said something like, I've never done those jobs that are just for the money. And she was like, I'm not against people doing that. She was like, but there are certain things that just cross that integrity line for me. And it wasn't worth the money for me to do that, whatever those jobs were. Right. And so again, I think it's a very personal thing where you kind of have to figure out what are your bottom lines, like what are you willing to put up with, what are you willing to say yes or no to. And so for me, one of those bottom lines and kind of parameters that I had, especially once I got to Houston, was the fact that I had 2 young kids and I was a newly single mom. And I had to figure out, like, okay, well, I can't afford childcare. Freelance is so unpredictable. I needed benefits. I needed, my children needed me to be around. How do I make that work? So I had to be very strategic about how I was going to build my career while still keeping a stable family life, right? And so it's something, and mental health challenges and all that stuff is something I feel really strongly about, that people don't talk about it. And you were talking about how emotional filmmakers are. I mean, artists are crazy. I mean, it's historically known we're all a little insane here. And that's one of the wonderful things about it. But you take a bunch of crazy people and then you put them in a workplace with like HR expectations, and you're like, this is a disaster.
And then put great disappointment on that and watched it just like hit an ant pile.
Here we go. It's like, we're all basically gambling for these big hits, and you have to manage those expectations. And so, and that takes time, and it takes maturity, and it takes, I think, being like straight with yourself, and that takes a lot of work. I mean, a lot of people get into it. I mean, art again comes from difficult places often, and so you kind of have to work through a lot of that stuff sometimes to be a functioning human being. And that applies to, okay, well, now we're taking that really emotional, difficult thing and putting it in a team environment with long days and heavy equipment. How do you do that in a safe way? And still be sane and have a family to go back to at the end of the day and all
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's true. Wow.
So yeah, I just a lot of conversations. I don't really, there's no like chart or handout that I can be like, this is what you do, but I try and get them to think about it,
Yes.
So I'm like, this is going to be therapy for the next 16 weeks, you're going to have these personal assignments and I will keep it confidential, but I think it's important to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
What do you think, like, what's the number one thing, if you could pinpoint it, that maybe an expectation that students come in with that you have to out of the gate going, oh man, that is going to be a tough one.
That is tough. And I'm also one of those people that like, I never want to quash anybody's dreams too,
of course.
because you just never know, there are people who have made amazing things happen out of something that maybe everybody thought was going to be a disaster,
A million%. Yeah.
So I don't, I wouldn't ever want anybody to quash my own dreams either because it's based on their perspective. But I do think that there's the number one thing I think I hear a lot that I tend to quash and there's no gentle way, is that I'll get the students that are like, I want to be in the film industry to make a lot of money. And I'm like, goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, please, I hope you have a backup plan.
Yeah.
Like have another job. Like, this is why I teach. Like, I love teaching, but I also need to pay the bills,
right.
So it's, especially the independent market is so difficult, especially right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in a film center like Los Angeles or even Atlanta,
That's true.
There's just not, there are jobs here and there is work being done and there are great people. It's a great community, but it's also a smaller community and, there's just only so much. So that's the number one thing.
Sure. No, I get that.
But it's interesting because a lot of people, especially having gone to USC, everybody was in there being like, I'm going to be the next director.
Sure.
Like, I'm going to be,
Sure.
Whatever. At Houston Community College, I have a lot of students that are like, I really just want to be a camera operator at the Toyota Center and watch Rockets games. Like, that's, we get the writer-director types, or the producer types, but a lot of people are like, I just want to be a YouTube editor, or I just want to, whatever, be a sound recordist, and things like that. And I had one student years ago who, we offer classes free for senior citizens. And so he was retired and all he wanted to do was learn how to make good fly fishing videos for his YouTube channel. Like, that was it.
Wow.
That was all he wanted to learn. And it was amazing, So
I love that.
So I love the students there. They're just so many different, they're coming from so many different places, which was very different than my student education, experience. So, yeah.
Well, okay, so we're talking about the teaching thing. We've come from that perspective. How about you personally? Okay, you're developing projects. You have projects out there. What drives you to tell a story? What is it? What makes you say, yes, this is a story I want to tell. I want to do this. I want to invest X amount of years of my life on this thing.
Oh, it's a great question. Personally, I'm fascinated by the human condition and how we relate to each other, what makes us who we are, our identity, how we form that identity. And so for me, a lot of it is about kind of that development as a character. So for me, it's largely character based. I'm interested in this kind of person, or sometimes it is world. I do have a sci-fi that I've been wrestling with that is, I'm more fascinated by the world than, and I'm trying to figure out who is the best kind of character for that world. But largely, a lot of things are just thinking about, what are stories that speak to me, characters that I, can't let go. I tend to have these ideas that are kind of percolating in my mind for a long time, and then they kind of start like sticking together, and then it kind of sticks together with other things, and it kind of just, it spends a lot of time just in my mind for a long time, and then finally it starts like knocking on the door, It's like, let me out, and that's that's kind of the process,
Yeah.
you know, and it's very organic in that sense. I don't necessarily have a particular method.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be very outline oriented. I do a lot of research and character backgrounds. And again, for me, everything comes down to character. But, you know, it's just, I am a writer who needs to rewrite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the type of writer that like gets a draft out and it's pretty good and then does a couple more drafts and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do a garbage draft.
Right.
And then I keep working on it.
Right.
Like somebody asked me recently, like, oh, well, what draft are you on for my second feature? And I was like, I don't know, 100? Like, I mean, to me, it's not even worth counting
Right.
because it's like,
Yeah.
I'm always playing with it. And that's actually something that I'm trying to figure out now with this second feature is that every project, every creative project is never done. It's just abandoned. You know, you just are kind of like, I can't do anymore.
Yes.
I cannot edit a single more frame.
Yes.
I can't tweak these levels anymore.
Right.
I can't do any more pickups. Like you
Right.
just say, this is it. But up until that point, I'm always constantly challenging myself and the project and everything about like, is this the best way to tell it? Is this
Sure.
what it needs to be? And so I'm always open to kind of like reconsidering and honing it. And so yeah, I'm trying to kind of get to that point as I'm bringing on collaborators for this next project. It's like, they're kind of like, well, you kind of just need to get to the draft where you're like, this is it. And no more. And I'm like, well, but when we get an actor on board, they're going to have notes. And then I'm going to have, you know, it's like,
Right.
I like that. I like the play of that.
Yeah.
But I also understand at a certain point, you kind of just have to say,
This is it.
this is it.
How important is that to you in your process, the collaborators? I mean, 'cause you got some
absolutely.
people who are just, this is it, this is the, you know, and then you're big
No,
collaborator.
for me, I'm a big collaborator. I was just talking about this in my class the other day. I said I'm really against the auteur theory. I don't actually believe that it exists. And if somebody calls themselves an auteur, I'm
A little scared.
but mainly because it takes so many people. Because it takes so many people. There is no auteur. They might have a vision, they might be a great leader, but those other people that are operating those cameras, that are acting in those roles, that are setting up those lights, creating those wardrobe and designs and editing it together, all of those people have their own agency and they're putting in their own artistic talent.
Yeah.
And so they're making this auteur look really good
Right.
if it works,
Right.
you know?
That's right.
So for me, like I said, I'm always willing to look at things from a new perspective, or I welcome those questions or challenges or things like that. And I love working with my actors and my DP and trying to figure things out. But again, there is that knowing, I think, as an artist, where you kind of have to, especially if you want to be a director, where you kind of go, okay, I've heard what you said, and I can see your point of view, but in terms of what I'm trying to do, this is actually the direction I need to go in. And so whether I change my mind or don't change my mind, what it does is it just makes whatever that decision is stronger.
Right. That's
because
good.
I've considered it.
That's good.
So collaborating and getting that kind of feedback and conversation, it always makes a project stronger.
Yes.
For me.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Takes a certain level of security too to be able to do that. It's not because somebody could think like, oh, if I have to ask you, and there's some people who just, if they have to ask somebody, then they feel like, you know, somehow it lessens their vision or lessens, and it just doesn't.
It doesn't.
As a director, I love collaboration.
Yeah.
I think it always makes everything stronger. I mean,
I
you
do
got to
too.
learn really quick that you don't got it all.
Right.
You know,
Right.
people have a lot of great giftings. I mean,
And I don't want to.
no.
I don't, because I know that you can only, that old saying that you can only be good at a lot of things, but only
Right.
great at one thing.
That's right.
You know, and I want to hit excellent.
Yes.
I definitely know I am not excellent at editing, cinematography, DP, lighting. Like all those things are not my expertise.
Right.
I lean heavily on the right team
Correct.
of collaborative people
Yes.
that are. I am counting though
Right.
that you are.
That's right.
Right.
So if something goes wrong in your area,
Yes.
even though I'm head of the ship, don't look at me.
Yeah.
I give you full reign to run that
Yes.
department,
Sure.
to be the expert
Yeah.
in that area.
Mhm.
You know, it's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing. But that's how the whole ship rises.
There's got to be the trust.
You know,
Yeah.
there
You've gotta
does.
have the
I mean,
trust.
you gotta have trust and grace all at the same time
True.
Yeah.
for it to all work together, and everybody has to be on the same page of problem solving instead of pointing the finger of blame game
Sure.
Right.
to really move it forward.
Yep.
You know, so I worked on a feature one time, and it was really cool to see, like, if something went wrong in the camera department, you know, the gaffers were over there like, hey, I got this on the truck. I got this, or I can help you here. This, whatever. You know, they like band together and the crew helped each other
Mhm.
instead of being like, I don't know, pick that up. That's not mine. That's camera department.
Right.
You know, you're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Those are lousy
no,
situations.
yeah, like that's not making it better. That's
Mhm.
not adding value across the board. So I think collaboration is what makes the environment great to work in,
Mhm.
Right.
because I have seen products come out of bad collaborations.
Mhm.
That does not mean just because there's a dictator in a bad situation that you don't get a good product out of it. Sometimes they do,
Right.
but it's not the environment that you would choose to want to work in again.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
that's a start over every time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, it's a new
Yep.
crew every time. There's not
Yeah.
longevity in it. And that's where I say your career looks different. There's different ways.
Right. Yeah. If
doing
you're
that.
burning bridges every time you're doing a new project, it's bad.
Yeah,
That's bad.
it is.
Bad.
Yeah,
It is.
That's true.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I think you're working on now to wrap up, to sum up. So this could go forever.
Yes.
But to wrap up and sum up, you know, so you teach at the school, you are working on a feature right now in development, you're in the middle of a short
Mhm.
right now. Any kind of dates of releases of any of those, and then how could people connect with you, support you, follow you, get involved with what you're doing? All the fun things.
I'm Jenny Waldo, Jenny with a Y, on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I don't really do Twitter so much anymore, but it's got a great screenwriting community.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I hang in there for. But so yeah, and we're my first feature is Acid Test, and you can go to acidtestfilm.com. It's also Acid Test Film on social media, but you can also find it on my website as well, jennywaldo.com, and watch my first feature. And the short film, because it is partially funded by the Houston Arts Alliance, the City of Houston grant body, we will be having a work in progress screening for it sometime, I think, in the fall. So again, just
Cool.
stay tuned on social media for that. And then the feature, it's based on a true story out of Baytown, Texas, and it's about a woman who owned an auto body shop. So it's a woman in a man's world, which I identify with. And she got in trouble with the city over this hot pink Mustang that she planted flowers inside and stuck it out as like a landmark for her shop. And the city officials said it was a violation of the junk car ordinance, which is an ordinance that was only enforced when people complained. So it's kind of like a town out to get her, town divided. She, has to fight for her business and everything. And so it's a fun story called Martha's Mustang. We also got a city grant for that to do a table read a couple of years ago, and I'm excited. I think it's a good project. Again, it's a local story, and we're going to be doing some community awareness events to get people interested in working on it or fundraising for it, resourcing locations and wardrobes and Mustangs and things like that. So we're
Cool.
just hopefully we'll be shooting it later next year, but it's a bigger project than my first one, so it's gonna take a lot.
Fun. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sitting with us and sharing and, giving a lot of nuggets of wisdom to our audience.
Definitely.
of your journey. And I hope you were encouraged by Jenny's story. And I hope you reach out and follow her on all of the things.
Yes.
But Kelly, it's been good.
It's been good.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being on. Until then, we'll see you on Set Life.